We're heading into week 2 of the preseason, and we still have best ball drafts and even some redrafts rolling right now. What ADPs are rising and which ones should you take as a warning? I have Justin Herzig over on From Establish the Run, and we're here to break that down for you right here on the Fast Draft Podcast. All right, my boy, James Cook, it is done. They signed the deal. He just has a 4-year contract. He was doing the hold in. I don't know if you're one of the 5 people watching Hard Knocks. This is easily the least hype for Hard Knocks I've ever seen in my career. But he's been active in camp. There wasn't this weird animosity like we saw with the Giants last season. So, and they got the deal done. He's currently the RB17. Justin, you don't know me super well, but my pronouns are film and bro. I started doing projections this year. That's right. Happy learn how to putt. And like right now I have him projecting as like a healthy 13.7 points per game. That's even with accounting for some of that touchdown regression that we've seen. Where are you at with James Cook and at his cost?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the past couple of weeks, when obviously the market started getting hesitant with the lack of a deal, we started seeing him to fall, and that kind of went to almost around like the picks like 48 to 50. I expect he's going to climb back up into kind of the late 30s. I think when you're looking at it from a best ball angle, he does deliver you that touchdown upside, and so think of it kind of like a Derrick Henry light, where you're on a very strong offense. You're not going to be catching many passes, but in the right game environment, you could put up multi-touchdown games. So I think that does have value. The challenge is that he's just not, even though they just came out and said like, hey, we think he can be a 3-down back. But the thing is, they're not going to use him that way. They still believe that Ty Johnson's probably the best 3rd-down back in the league. They still have Ray Davis as very competent back. So I think for a team like the Bills who have Super Bowl aspirations, they're going to limit his workload. But for best ball, I do like him better in best ball because you can get those kind of peak outlier performances from a pure touchdown standpoint, but don't expect that he's going to get substantially more volume or pass catching.
Exactly. And that's why I try to nuke and nerf the touchdowns a little bit. Like 20 is a lot, obviously, and expect him to repeat that. We already know that talking about both sides of my mouth, Josh Allen can get touchdowns on his own, and they also don't want Josh Allen to be used like that. They've been adamant about it. Josh Allen's been adamant that he can't put his body up like that. But at the same time, it's like the things you said. I think Ray Davis is someone that they value. And I'm not saying that like rest in peace, Ray Davis season, summer 2025 to summer 2025. But like that's going to be significant usage there. And I also expect at least an uptick in maybe some of that passing volume in the red zone to go up. They got Josh Palmer for a reason. I'm not saying Josh Palmer is going to come out there and be Randy Moss for this team, but they have a clear issue that they're trying to address. And then Dalton Kincaid is there. I'm in on James Cook at price, but he's one of those where like, cool, RB17 is probably a little bit cheap, but I can't see myself reaching too much higher. And looking at RB17, that's just positionally, but like looking at it from an ADP standpoint, I'm not going to reach too much higher on him. Next, we're going to go to a rook, a little baby, TreVeyon Henderson, RB19. Their words in the streets as a dynasty bro, as well as getting in the best ball. They are dynasty bros saying this, but should TreVeyon Henderson be in the Amarian Hampton range? Because we got news that even if Najee Harris loses his eye, he's a Cyclops now. They're still going to put in another running back to go along with Hampton. I don't know how much Rashawn Slater does for you in nerfing this offense, but Henderson is, in my opinion, as a Pats fan, and I'm a realistic Pats fan, meaning I'm like some of them Dallas fans that think Dak sucks. I'm not like that bad, but Henderson's clearly the best weapon. And you think about Jahmyr Gibbs, all these other running backs that we chase for their pass catching upside. Do you buy into that, or do you think RB19 is appropriate?
Yeah, so I think going into the draft, I do believe Marion Hampton was kind of a tier of his own in that tier two of running backs, where Genti was
Hmm.
one, Hampton was two, and then you had kind of a group of them that TreVeyon would fall into after that. So I do think from a skill set wise, and specifically for fantasy, we do need to, we can't just forget about our kind of priors going to the draft because Marion Hampton does really project as a bell cow. Like that's his skill set. I'm not too worried about the comments around like, yes, we want to get another back in there. Okay, you're going to use come on Adele. You're going to like find someone free agency like Omarion Hampton's cream's going to the rise to the top. And so
Hmm.
whether or not like, yeah, there are very, very, very few backs right now in the league that are actually getting your Saquon Barkley type workload. And to be honest, even that, like when they get a blowout game, you lose a little. But like that's a thing of the past. So we expect there's always going to be some kind of number two mixing in. Those comments in the quote, it's the same thing we hear of, oh, we want to use both backs in Arizona. We want to use three
Hmm.
backs in New York Jets and Tampa. We want to use more Sean Tucker. Like, yeah, in the preseason, everybody wants to use more backs. Everybody has these great players and that you're friendly with on your team and you want them to be able to display. But when you actually get pedal to the metal in the games, you use your best players. And so I think that's where the gap is from Aaron Hampton and TreVeyon Henderson is the Patriots still see Ramondre Stevenson as a great asset to that team. And from a early down backs, maybe even goal line, like that's where TreVeyon, yes, his upside you could definitely argue is higher than Omarion Hampton because Omarion Hampton's not going to get much pass catching. Like Greg Roman doesn't have his QBs throwing to his running backs that often. And TreVeyon Henderson, like it's the exact opposite situation over there. But the likelihood of him actually usurping Ramondre for the early down, maybe the goal line work without an injury is it's less it's not too likely. So that's why I think like there is a tier there, but I wouldn't be shocked if like it decreases as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, because I'm with you that what you said was perfect. Like we're going to use another back. I'm like, yeah, Amar and Hampton needs water for sure. You're going to get someone else mixed in there. But people forget that TreVeyon Henderson is on the Patriots, who, let's just say it, Will Campbell fixes one leak in that offensive line, and there's still a lot more there. And I'm big on Drake May, but that's still Drake May, still a young guy. There's still not a lot of pass catchers, and that matters. Meaning that, yeah, I think there's a lot of work for TreVeyon Henderson, but you can't just hyper funnel everything to your running back. And if you don't have good pass catchers within that system, then you're going to get a lot of these 3-and-outs, and you're going to have a lot of stall outs on offense. And people don't really think about that when they do this type of analysis. So yeah, I like I like that. I'm probably going to take him more often ahead of Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, just because I'm going to go for like a hard swing for the fences. But I just think that ceiling, or excuse me, rather the floor for Hampton matters way more than what the hype we're getting for Henderson. Next, I'm going to go incredibly boring. I don't know if so much that he was rising in ADP or he's in the range where other guys are just falling, but it's Isaiah Pacheco at RB25. I know a lot of the homies on the internet streets are like, well, he's a big discount and he's a type of player that you want. RB25. What if this is another case that I think this is a boring answer? Isaiah Pacheco is just appropriate. He doesn't offer you a lot in the passing game. I do think the Chiefs are going to have an uptick in passing now that they've really had a concerted effort to bring in pass catchers and ones that I actually believe in and not just these Sky Moore gimmick guys. I don't know if I'm going out of my way to get more Pacheco than where he's at. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think what you said makes complete sense. Like the upside case, it's just really hard to see for a
Mhm.
team that likes to throw around the goal line. We know that the Chiefs kind of they still have Kareem Hunt and they still kind of plan to use him. They drafted Brashard Smith. They signed Elijah Mitchell. Like you still have I don't want to say a wealth of talent, but you have a range of opportunity of options back there. And it doesn't seem like they're going to just, ride Isaiah Pacheco, especially coming off the injury. The positives for him are that he does sound pretty healthy in camp, and there's no one else back there that is really, talent wise fighting him for that job. But it doesn't sound like that's going to lead to just a substantial amount of volume and workload for him. And as you mentioned, the pass catching, it's not there. Like they want to have someone in that Jarek
Mhm.
McKinnon, Damian Williams type role. And it sounds like that could be Elijah Mitchell. It sounds like it could be Brashard Smith. Like I'm not sure. But either way, I think that limits the upside of Isaiah Pacheco. He's fine. I'm not taking him that much. I think there's other guys around him that I like the upside better.
That's exactly it. Like if you're a high volume best ball drafter, get get a little bit in the mix in. But like, and this is why I like talking about boring things, because oftentimes in the fantasy space, we're just like Jim Cramer smashing mugs. It's like, you need to buy this player, you need to sell him. Like sometimes guys are just fine and they're fine. Don't like, no action is needed. And oftentimes people forget that doing nothing is a chess move in fantasy football. Before we go any further, I got some wide receivers, then I'll finish on some running backs. But if you like content like this, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button. More importantly, if you want in on the fast draft best ball action, where we're giving you shorter, easier tournaments that are more accessible, where just a slight bathroom break where you are hiding from your boss for 20 minutes can get you a full rabbit draft, go over to fast draft and download that from any app store, whether it's Google, Samsung, whatever. We're available for you. You can use my code on the screen, JAG, and we'll give you up to a $50 deposit match. And we will jump right back into it. Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver 37. He seems to be the wide receiver one by default, even though Jawan Jennings is there. I think Jawan Jennings is going to repeat a lot of what he did last year. I mean that as a good thing and bad thing. But let's be honest, there's more targets within this offense. Ricky Pearsall is a first round pick. We don't know when Ayuk is going to be back. Earliest we see right now is that he's going to be back week 6. Is it a stretch to say that Pearsall can be 2025's 2023 Ayuk if he stays healthy and if we can, like, if that offensive line holds up? Let's give that caveat.
Yeah, I mean, I think sure it's possible. The positive for him is that he has the draft capital. Hey, end of first round. Whether or not he's that level of talent, some people believe he got pulled up there, but maybe still has that level of capital, and maybe he does have the talent. Coming off, getting shot last year, played a lot of games where he just wasn't efficient in yards per route run, and kind of a usage standpoint had that 2-game stretch at the end that people are kind of bullish on. But I think it's at the end of the day, it's, hey, what role do you think he's actually going to play in this offense? And who else is he competing against from a health, from a contract wise, all of that? Because we still have to wait. Like Jawan Jennings still has this calf injury, with a contract injury, maybe we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's a chance that just Pearsall comes off like the early part of the season is just a focal part of the offense and just continues to grow. I'm not that bullish. I don't trust the talent that much, and I'm often playing for playoffs aspects. And that's when I think Brandon Ayuk does come back, and it really becomes like it's a pretty crowded wide receiver pass catcher room with a lot of talent, because you still have the George Kittle, you have the Pearsall, you have the Juwan Jennings, you have the Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey is still going to get a ton of the volume. So the way that the 49ers we've seen in the past couple of years from a spike week standpoint for fantasy, like there's a lot of, hey, you get these big weeks because the team's explosive, the offense is really strong, but it's hard to predict on a game by game basis. So Pearsall is someone that I haven't taken that much of. The more just kind of injury risk, like it might be a blind spot, it might be someone I'm trying to fill in, but overall, it's just a lot of really good wide receivers around that range that I kind of think are better talents. But yeah, I could be wrong on this one.
Yeah, I'm a bit more bullish on him than you are, and honest to God, all your points are correct. The only one I worry about is Ayuk, for the simple fact that he's just missed a lot of time over the last 2 seasons. This is a timing based offense. And speaking a little bit to the injury docs, I do trust all 2 of them out of the 20 of them. A lot of times, getting back to what you would think is like 100% performance is often rare. But like I said, at least with fast draft, there is no tournament factor, because it's just like rotisserie style season long total. But again, if you're playing underdog and stuff like that, I get 100% what you're saying when you're playing more for the playoff aspect, where you want to get to the dance, and then when you're at the dance, you want the optimal lineup to win. Next, it's Emeka Egbuka. His ADP keeps rising, but he's one of the rare cases where someone has jumped 3 rounds over like the last 2 months, and I'm still in at cost. And here's my pitch. We're all in on Travis Hunter. now that we know he's going to play at least, or we've been told he's going to play at least 80% of the snaps. We love the Buccaneers offense and what it does for multiple targets. It's one of the rare offenses where you have three wide receivers and you can see them all being viable. Why aren't we more excited for Emeka Egbuka, who's also a first round talent? Granted, it's not like a top 2 pick, but he's in the exact same offense we're excited about, and he's attached to a quarterback that has already done it in Baker Mayfield. This is not a slight from me on Trevor Lawrence. I like Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence, we make a lot of excuses for him, whereas Baker Mayfield has done it. Where is the stop for you on Emeka Egbuka where you're going to draft him? Or, like, is it getting up to the Travis Hunter range? Do you think he deserves to be here? Or maybe you're just avoiding him because you're worried about Godwin and Evans?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, the difference between Travis Hunter and Emeka Egbuka is very large. The only really commonality is that they are both first-round talents. But from an actual wide receiver standpoint, like Travis Hunter's upside from an actual player-wise is substantially higher than Emeka Egbuka. Now, I agree with you on the situation. I am not concerned about like, oh, there's too many mouths to feed in Tampa. Like, I think that Egbuka can be really strong. I'm really bullish on the entire Bucs offense. The quotes that just came out today from Scott Reynolds, the beat reporter for the Bucs, one of the kind of closest guys there. He says the Bucs will be without Chris Godwin to start the season. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if he doesn't start the year on the PUP, the physically unable to perform list. So the the murmurs around Chris Godwin have me concerned. If you look back at the timeline all the way back to, yes, they gave him that contract, but then they draft Emeka Egbuka. It comes out that he had a second surgery. So I am concerned about Chris Godwin. That was kind of the main reason for me to not want to draft Emeka Egbuka early on, because if Chris Godwin, he thrives in the slot. Emeka Egbuka was probably the best slot receiver in football, in college football last year. But if it doesn't sound like that's going to be in competition, there's a decent chance that Emeka Egbuka just kind of replaces Chris Godwin, even when Godwin gets back into this offense, if he's going to be missing 4 or 6 games and so forth. So I think Emeka Egbuka, yeah, even like for people who are doing redraft, like he is probably a prime target. I get for tournaments with Bestball, because you're kind of paying a bad CLV compared to where people were getting him earlier. It's a little concerning, but he's still, I think, just I think he's an absolute smash, though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And like, in my grading model that I do for wide receivers, Travis Hunter was significantly ahead of Emeka Egbuka. But then on the flip side of it, a lot of these guys that just do kind of a production model, Emeka Egbuka, every metric says that he's by in all intents and purposes on the same tiers, let's say like Garrett Wilson or higher on there. And I still think Garrett Wilson's a more skilled player. So this is kind of how I feel about like Rashee Rice, where I don't think Rashee Rice is as skilled as his production is, but the situation is so good that at what point do you have to just to ignore it? That's why it's like what you said about Travis Hunter. 100% agree. But like realistically, if I had Travis Hunter, I would click the button on Emeka Egbuka not too far after him just because of the Bucs situation. So I'm curious to see how this plays out when it's all said and done. Next, we have another rookie, another first-round wide receiver, Matthew Golden, wide receiver 44. The Packers are a perennial quagmire. The biggest one I love out of here that I feel comfortable, I love Tucker Kraft. Jayden Reed, I think that dream of him being in on more than 75% of the snaps is dead. Romeo Doubs is still very much a factor, and Golden has been lighting it up at camp. Again, when you're thinking about upside versus like the cost, Matthew Golden only 4 slots behind Egbuka. How far do you think that the upside is for these two players?
Yeah, I mean, when we're drafting specifically for Bestball, we're thinking of range of outcomes as you're talking about and trying to figure out what do these worlds look like? How likely is it to hit that kind of top 10% outcome? And what does that top 10% outcome actually look like for that player? For Matthew Golden, I think the ceiling is quite high. So he was a first round talent. He wasn't most people's kind of favorite wide receiver. He wasn't the most polished coming out. But when you have a team like the Packers hasn't drafted a first round wide receiver in so long, and they say we need one. Josh Jacobs is even saying we need a number 1 alpha. They take him immediately in preseason. We start seeing him in 2 wide receiver sets outside of alongside Dobbs, and like that level of confidence, that level of, hey, we are going to put him in here. We are trusting him. And then it's okay. So if we know he's going to kind of get the usage early on, he's hopefully getting the trust, the rapport with Jordan Love. It then comes into what is the actual upside in that offense. Now, the Tucker Kraft one is so interesting because I think Tucker Kraft is kind of the great ball knower versus like spreadsheet kind of debate there. Because when you watch Tucker Kraft, when you see what he has from his talent wise, and you think about, oh, attached to Jordan Love, he can be such a great player. But when you actually dive into the spreadsheets, this is a team that wants to run first. Yes, it was a little odd last year. You obviously have the Malik Willis games. You have the Jordan Love injury in week 1. But like we still are expecting their pass rate over expectation is not going to be like substantial, is not going to be that high. This is still a run first team. And so I think that's where it is. Hey, where's this volume going to come from? I believe that Matthew Golden has that opportunity to really become the alpha in that offense, but it's going to come then at guys like Tucker Kraft. I don't see the volume coming for a Tucker Kraft. And you also have the Dobbs, the Jaden Reed. It's a lot of mouths to feed. But all that said, I think Matthew Golden can kind of build his way into being that kind of primary alpha.
And to give context to like the explaining the chess move on Tucker Kraft, you as like everyone else, Tucker Kraft is finally in the range of people I'm like, fuck it, because like it's just like, oh, I didn't get Browers, oh, I didn't get McBride, oh, I didn't get Kittle. With tight ends, I'm gonna black out for like 10 rounds, and then I'll look at Tucker Kraft as like a range that something could happen. If Jaden Reed goes down, then does Tucker Kraft become more of a short yardage target? Because you're right, this is a thing I've had to evolve into throughout my time in this industry on tight ends. Cause I used to be like, well, this guy could be somebody, this guy could be something, but it's like you said, the upside is it's all the same. And then maybe, and I think Tucker Kraft is in there in the maybe range. Next, another tight end that actually, this was a perfect segue. You set me up for it. It's Tyler Warren. I've been avoidant in season long at cost. Even in Dynasty, I've avoided because I'm making a bet, could be a bad bet. I'm willing to say that this is a hot take, that I can get him cheaper in the offseason next year. Now he seems to be a hyper-focused target. He's looked good in training camp. He's looked good in the one preseason game that we've seen. We see that ADP go up. I'm okay with I'm okay with Tyler Warren as a tight end too. If you're really fading tight end and maybe you're going to double or triple up as some of your last dart throws, I'm okay with it. But can this Colts offense actually support multiple weapons? If we're talking about Jordan Love and a run first offense at the Packers not being able to support wide receivers like that, I'd argue the wide receivers for the Colts are at a similar level, if not higher, if you think about the floor, and they have a better tight end, but far worse quarterback play. How much higher can we actually draft Tyler Warren? And I know a lot of people want to copy and paste Brock Bowers, but I mean, you're a guy who's in them spreadsheets. It's usually bad process to expect generational numbers to happen year in and year out.
Yeah, no, we really shouldn't be comparing Tyler Warren to Brock Bowers. If anything, I think Sam Laporta is probably a more fair comparison. If you look at kind of the draft capital as well, kind of the player archetype. But for the Tyler Warren aspect, he's the type of tight end that I want to be targeting in drafts if I'm missing out on kind of the elite 2 guys. I think McBride and Bowers are a tier above Kittle, but that should. But
They
he's
are. They are.
Him and Colson Loveland are like the types where when you talk of range of outcomes, you have the rookie aspect. They're both first round talents. These, you have coaches that really want to emphasize this position. It seems like, but with Tyler Warren, it's a bet on Daniel Jones because if Anthony Richardson is the quarterback, he just hurts every single player in that offense besides maybe Alec Pierce. We can get into that later, but pretty much every offensive player is hurt besides Anthony Richardson because he's going to be rushing more. He's going to be less efficient with his throws, with the passing game. They probably will play a little slower pace with Anthony Richardson as well. Now, if you believe that Daniel Jones is actually going to win the job, then I think that Downs and Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren are all great picks. And I mean, it's just tough because like when we talk about best ball, we want to stack, we want to correlate as well. But like, I don't have nearly enough confidence to be drafting much Daniel Jones, and especially not in fast draft where, hey, you have only 10 teams and only 15 rounds. So how do we kind of play these? I still think Tyler Warren is fine, but that upside, in my opinion, is substantially capped if you have the Anthony Richardson bet that plays out. And I'm kind of playing it as like, I think Anthony Richardson is probably like 60-40 to win the week one, and maybe his expected number of games is in like the 9 to 10, and they swap back and forth with Dan Jones and stuff. So like you're probably going to get a little of both. But if things work out, if Daniel Jones actually is the week one starter and keeps that job, yeah, Tyler Warren could very easily finish the top 3-4 tight end.
Yeah. And I will say I love how optimistic you're on Daniel Jones, because it's like it's one of those things where how you say it could sound one thing. It's like, well, you're depending on Daniel Jones if he keeps the job, but then you're like, well, you're depending on Daniel Jones if he keeps the job, because what scares me is how is he not definitively ahead at Anthony Richardson at what we've seen at this point? But at the end of the day, like I said, it's all about that ceiling, especially in best ball. The next one here, it's it's hard for me to get past the film bro and all the other stuff. Jaydon Blue. I've clicked the button a couple of times. I don't see it. And I think we're holding on to this expectation that the Cowboys offensive line is the top 5 offensive line, and whoever's back there is just going to get fed. That offensive line aged out. We've already seen that have an impact. They have another quagmire at running back. And I'm not saying Javonte Williams is good. I'm not saying Miles Sanders is good. But the fact that Jaydon Blue hasn't stood out so far, he was a 5th round pick, and he was already, in my opinion, a limited player. You're making the Chase Brown bet that he's going to overcome a whole lot of stuff to where this team is okay, that he's going to ram into the back of his guards, because every third time he's going to squirt out and, rip off like a 20-yard run. And then there's a receiving aspect in there. I get it. It's hard for me to pay more than RB41. Is the price just so low that it should matter and he's worth the bet at this point?
Okay. There was a lot there. So I agree with you that we've seen limited action from him in college. I agree with you that we do not want him just running into the back of his offensive lineman, because it is not a great offensive line. However, the bad offensive line is going to be far more impactful for the Javonte Williams, the Miles Sanders. Jaydon Blue, his skill set is pass catching. His skill set is outside runs. Like that skill set, his speed, 4.3, 840, a bit more, very elusive, definitely has the burst. That could fit really well with what the Cowboys need. We're expecting the Cowboys to have trouble rushing. And when you look at the talent back there, the offensive line, like there's going to be issues. This should just actually lean on more opportunities for Jaydon Blue. First off, to get on the field and then show that he just has a level of burst and explosiveness that the other guys don't. And you're right. He may not ever earn the between the 20s, long down and, early down and distance, like rushes, which are the least valuable in fantasy. But if he can get the pass catching role and he has that explosiveness, like I think it's very possible. And you've seen those comps. They even comped in Darren Sproles. I think Devon Achane's a fair comp as well, from like that rookie year style of play. Do I expect his rookie year? No. But I think that's the level of upside that you're looking for. And when you're comparing like, hey, rookies versus other competition, he doesn't need an injury ahead of him to actually win that job. He has the talent. He has kind of the opportunity. And I don't care that like in preseason, he hasn't really shown off. Rookies in preseason rarely ever actually get that opportunity. And he had that little heel injury. So that probably, took away from his early hype as well. But no, Jaydon Blue, I'm very bullish on. For ETR, I think I ended up going with him as my sleeper for this year. Yeah, I did. As my sleeper for this year. So I'm very bullish on the opportunity ahead.
Well, first time on this channel, folks, a pro Jaydon Blue guy on here. I've been like, if anything, it's been like a political campaign on there. Jaydon Blue hates this country, essentially, for me on here. So it's nice to reach across the aisle, as they say. Next, another running back, Trey Benson. The coaching staff has said they want to get Trey Benson involved. Trey Benson has said he's going to get more involved. Even James Conner has said he's going to get more involved. But what if that just means that, and I just did my Arizona projections. They're the first for most people to do it. It's alphabetical. After it was all said and done, I just kind of wanted Connor a little bit less, and I still maybe don't want Trey Benson, because I think as long as Connor is there, he's just going to be capped on upside. Imani DeMarcado still had a really good play there, so you're really depending on him to just dominate in the passing game, and that's him dominating in the same area of the field that Trey McBride, who we know is the alpha for this offense in that passing game, and then we're hoping and wish casting for Marvin Harrison Jr. Realistically, and this is why, again, guys, this is why it's exciting for me that I finally evolved to that level where I do projections, because you can really it brings you just down to reality of all the hopium in here. Even though he's rising, I don't get why at this point. I don't know if you're in on Trey Benson beyond just maybe, like a little bit of exposure.
Yeah, the James Conner Trey Benson kind of saga has been quite interesting all offseason, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster because I want to go back to, I think it was probably like end of last season, and we started hearing positives around Trey Benson, like, hey, this is going to be more of a split backfield going forward. And that fine, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Now Trey Benson, this might be his chance to kind of, pay past the veteran. At the least, he's going to have some kind of role and can earn more. But then we start hearing more of, well, James Conner is our workhorse back. James Conner is the guy. James Conner's our captain. He's the one that we trust. And so now we're back there. And now, again, more recently, as you said, we're back to James Conner saying Trey Benson's going to have a role. The coach is saying he's going to have a role. When we get this kind of back and forth, in my mind, I'm still going to default to what we actually see on the field, especially because when we talk about multiple backs in the backfield, coaches love, and we alluded to this earlier, coaches love to say, hey, we want to get multiple of our backs in the field. We want to get them all at the same time. We want to get more usage out of them. And I keep going back to that Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears. We literally saw this last year. It makes complete sense when you say, I want to get more playing time for my number two. But when you actually get to the game, there's the guys you trust and the guys you don't. There's James Conner's saying, I can keep playing. I can still be out there. Give me more. And so James Conner's going to take more. So for me, I don't believe that like Trey Benson is going to have a substantially larger increase in his workload than last year. But when we think about it from a best ball standpoint, whether or not he does, like we're talking about, okay, so he's projected for 5 points or he's projected for 7 points. Either way, you don't care about that. You're not starting that in fantasy, and it doesn't really matter for best ball other than maybe you get like a 7, but with a touchdown because you get more opportunity. What really matters for Trey Benson is James Conner, even though he stayed healthy last year, historically does not have great health. If he gets hurt, what we want to know is that Trey Benson is the true number two and can get that workload. So if he actually starts playing a bit more, in that kind of, I'd say, number two, that's what's important to me. I don't care if he's 1B or number two. I want him to just be the clear number two. So if Conner gets hurt, then Trey Benson has the opportunity for a very high value role in that offense. So I'd say there are other backs that I feel more confident around him that are the number two, like Tyler Algier and such. So I'm okay with Trey Benson, but I agree that people are buying him at a more expensive price because of the belief that he's going to have that larger role when Connor's healthy. And I'm not buying as much for that because I just don't care that much, like for that outcome. But if Connor gets hurt, that's where Benson, I think, like if he actually has that number two, which turns into the one, has the value.
Yeah. Because right now, I think we're still in the training camp quagmire a bit, to where ADP is still wild out here. And I think we're drafting Trey Benson in that range of running backs, like it's right here, Jaydon Blue, Tank Bigsby, where we're drafting him in the backs that have standalone value, even though there are multiple backs. And realistically, we should be drafting him a tier below that. This is a handcuff. You don't want him unless you are drafting him with the hopes that something is going to happen to James Conner. If you're in like a regular, Joe Schmo redraft league, cool. You're going to draft Tank. You can draft him as like a handcuff or whatever if you believe in doing that strategy. But in best ball, yeah, like I just don't get a lot of Trey Benson because I just don't have him ranked that way that a lot of people are drafting him, which is a perfect segue to where, like, why is Tank Bigsby still going after Trey Benson on here? It's he had standalone value last season. This season, we already see that he has the Bucky role so far. And whether or not you believe in Tank Bigsby, you have to buy into the fact that at least Liam Cohen actually uses multiple backs in a way that both can be useful. Like what we saw with the Buccaneers, like I love Rachaad White at cost right now. The Bucs have been clear. It's like, yeah, we got two backs. This Bucky is a great player and he's going to be fine, but I still think we're drafting him as his absolute ceiling, whereas Rachaad White has had a lockdown on that pass catching role. If we project the same thing for the Jaguars, they keep telling us this, the same as what happened last year, where they're going to have one guy like Tank Bigsby get the tough roles, and then Travis Etienne is going to get the pass catching. Now, I know that Bashal Tootin is in there, but I think Tootin might eat into Etienne in the future more than he does Tank Bigsby, but who knows? Are you in at Tank Bigsby at cost?
Okay. So I think this is probably where we have our greatest disagreement of the show.
Oh,
I am fully out on Tank Bigsby. First
ooh,
off, I do not believe he can play the Rachaad White role. Tank Bigsby doesn't catch passes. Like
that's
even the
Bucky
Bucks.
role for
So
him.
Bucky, okay, but even Bucky, because Bucky started playing like with more pass catching role when he got that kind of the last 3-4 games for the Bucs season. Like, okay, so here's my Tank Bigsby aspect. I don't believe he catch passes, and if you look at what's happened over the past week or so, with Travis Etienne, like he got the playing time with the ones during the preseason game. He then the next two practices continues to show off as the number one. So with Travis Etienne, one of two things is likely happening. Either he actually is their primary back. He's going to actually get majority of the rushes because we know Travis Etienne is getting the pass catching. So if we try to use that Bucky Irving, Rachaad White comparison, you have Travis Etienne as a pass catching like Rachaad White, and you have Tank Bigsby as the rusher like Bucky. But Bucky also has a pass catching skill set. And I'm not sure if Tank Bigsby actually has that role because it looks like Travis Etienne, unless they're trying to display for a trade, which is possible. I think it's a lower likelihood, but I think Travis Etienne actually has a bit more of the primary rushing. We know he has the pass catching. And then I don't think we can dismiss Bashal Tootin. Yes, 4th-round pick, but one of the most electric backs in that in the draft class. And I think if you want to use like the Bucky Irving comp, that's it right there. I think it's fine to say that, like, I think Travis Etienne is the Rachaad White at the beginning of last year, where he has a pass catching skill set, but they're also going to give him a little more volume in the rushing game. And who, as the, we come down the stretch, Bashal Tootin will come in. He'll be the primary rusher, and he can, like Bucky Irving, still catch the ball and explosive as well. So that's where I think, like, if anything, assuming there's no trade, Tank Bigsby ends up being the odd man out. Travis Etienne starts off in the Rachaad White of beginning of last year role, which is pass catching, but also the primary running back. And as the season goes on, Tank Bigsby, that's your real Bucky Irving opportunity.
Okay, so you think Tank Bigsby, Sean Tucker is where you?
Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of the year, and again, if there is an injury, like Sean Tucker, I think is actually a pretty strong, like round 20 best ball pick because, hey, we saw in one game sample size how great of a game he is. And I think Sean Tucker actually has some really strong talent, but Sean Tucker doesn't catch passes. And Sean Tucker does have this other guy, Bucky, ahead of him. So if at the end of next year we look and we're like I think it's too clean of a comparison for it to like actually work out that well.
Yeah.
But like it does feel like Travis Etienne starts off as kind of the guy like Rachaad White did, but he's nowhere near as explosive and kind of as good of a back as what Tootin is. Tootin comes on in like the Bucky Irving as the rookie. And Tank Bigsby's just kind of there in case there's an injury. Yeah.
R.I.P. Again. I'm overweight on Tank Bigsby. Only time will tell at this point.
If Etienne gets traded, then like this changes everything. And now Tank Bigsby kind of starts off as that. I don't want to say Rachaad White because he just didn't catch passes, but maybe they just more explode, speed run into the Bucky Rachaad, and Tank just isn't going to catch passes. But the past week and a half has not been good for Tank Bigsby. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll do it, guys. Those are 10 players right now that are rising up in average draft position. That is Justin Herzig over with Establish the Run. If you're in on the Fast Draft Discord, Justin's in there sometimes, so you can hop in there and you could tell him how much you love Tank Bigsby or hate him. Or
Please do. I could be very wrong on all of this.
Yeah, we all could. Like I said, like I know you've done this game long enough, but we're gonna eat some L's at some point. So as always, like and subscribe, folks. If you're over on the audio side, make sure to leave us a review. It always helps as well. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
So I thought I needed. Ooh.